Chapter 226, Violence. Honored Master, this doesn't seem like your style. How come you're suddenly so indifferent to a beauty? Gilbert spoke, a look of utter confusion on his face. First of all, I have a use for the grass, so I won't be giving it to her. In addition, Cecilia throwing her weight around in front of me just because her rank is higher than mine is the kind of attitude that really leaves a bad taste in my mouth, so she won't get anything from me. He'd heard from Emily that Cecilia was a priest and had also focused on pharmacy. Her talent in the area of medicine was quite high. Although she didn't take the front line in combat, an expert priest and pharmacist like her would be of the utmost importance in critical times. A person like her could enable the warriors and mages to recover their energy swiftly in battle, and could use some priest magics and medicines to quickly stabilize wounds, allowing allies to return to the battlefield in short order. Han Shuo didn't tarry outside after leaving the old orc's shop, returning to his base of operations. Phoebe and Emily were bathed in the setting splendor of the sun and sitting lazily on two large chairs in the courtyard, chatting happily about something. When he walked in, all eyes shot to him. After a day's passage of time, the two girls had natural expressions on their face and didn't have the awkwardness from the morning. Beneath the rays of the evening sun, their charming faces were tinged with red. With eyes full of tenderness and a blush on their cheeks, they looked like two stunningly cute wives waiting for their husband's return. In that instant, Han Shuo's heart was suffused with warm contentment. He felt that both women were so beautiful, and if they could still interact so harmoniously after the truth was revealed, that would be wonderful for any man. "What are you thinking about standing there with a silly smile?" Phoebe would only appear friendly and down to earth when interacting with Han Shuo, that gentle tone only for him. "No, nothing." His beautiful wish could only be thought about at the moment. From Phoebe's personality, she wasn't the sort who would easily compromise. Therefore Han Shuo maintained a natural expression on his face in case he made her unhappy. "Brian, I'm afraid I'll have to leave first this time. I've just received a mission that I need to coordinate with younger sister Cecilia. I can't stay in the Valley of Sunshine any longer." Emily looked at Han Shuo longingly as she spoke apologetically. He first blinked and then thought deeply. Han Shuo understood that as a senior executive of the Dark Mantle, she did indeed had many things she needed to do and couldn't stay in one place forever. Nodding, Han Shuo revealed an understanding smile. "I understand. It's unsuitable for us to stay in the valley in the short term as well, so I'm preparing to leave too." As Phoebe and Emily stared in surprise, Han Shuo quickly repeated the reasoning he told Trunks and the others, laying out their gains and losses. Since his decision was correct, he quickly gained Phoebe and Emily's agreement. "Then what should we do next?" Phoebe focused her beautiful eyes on Han Shuo's body as she asked softly. "Being in charge of the Boost Merchant Guild, I don't think you can keep staying in the valley either. Why don't you go do your own thing? I'll take care of a few matters and then go find you in the capital." "Trunks has enough gold for now. I think with his abilities and connections he'll be able to build up his strength better staying in the outskirts of the Valley of Sunshine." "Alright, it looks like we'll need to temporarily separate for now. Here, these are the items you needed. The Valley of Sunshine is a remarkable place. It looks like you can find whatever you want as long as you're patient." Phoebe took out a pile of exotic ores and some rare metals from her space ring and placed them in the center of the yard, smiling at Han Shuo. These were the items that Han Shuo wanted to pass on to the dwarves to forge weapons, and some he wanted to keep for personal use as well. He was planning on refining some small treasures in his spare time. Phoebe had already given him the materials to refine the Wood Elite and Water Elite Zombie earlier. Now that all the materials for the Wood Elite Zombie had been collected, it was a perfect time for Han Shuo to head towards the Forest Troll's sacred ground and start the Wood Elite Zombie in the place of Extreme Wood, aiming to form it as soon as possible. "Oh right, Trunks. Keep an eye on Odysseus and the others. I don't know how long they'll need to consider. I think with your familiarity of the valley you'll be able to contact them at any time. I've already explained the situation to them. It's up to them if they want to join the Soul Destroyers or not." Han Shuo said to Trunks after thinking for a bit. "Don't worry, I know what to do. The Valley of Sunshine and the Dark Forest aren't too far away. I think it won't be too difficult for the two of us to remain in touch." Trunks smiled faintly. Han Shuo and Trunks had already decided on a point of contact between the two locations on their way back. Han Shao didn't tell him about the cemetery of death but gave him a marker for the waterfall where he often trained. The group of five thoroughly discussed the details again. Han Shao and a few would slip out under the cover of night. Thanks to Gilbert, they wouldn't need to leave through the entrance and could slip away soundlessly. Only Emily would stay behind for another day as she needed to leave with Cecilia. She could also give Lorna a heads up as well. The four immediately split up after leaving the Valley of Sunshine. According to Han Shao's instructions, Gilbert flew Phoebe to the city of Zajoski, helping her use the transportation matrix there to safely return to the Empire's capital and then reconvene with Han Shao at the Cemetery of Death. Trunks bid farewell to Han Shao and moved into the depths of the forest, vanishing without a trace in the blink of an eye. Han Shao strolled leisurely in the direction of the dark forest after parting ways with his group, not even employing the art of the mnemonic ninth heaven. He was planning on purposefully revealing his movement this time so he could attract Ferguson's attention so that the latter wouldn't keep pursuing Trunks because he didn't know that Han Shao had left. His expression was easy and carefree on the path out of the Valley of Sunshine. He traveled on foot without any steeds and seemed wholly unaware that he'd become a target beneath the pure moonlight gently falling from the night sky. The four great powers in the Valley of Sunshine patrol everywhere at critical moments to prevent any accidents from happening. When Han Shao took the initiative in exposing himself, everything seemed to fall into place. By using the three Yin demons' surveillance, he easily found several groups of people trailing him. When one of the pursuers seemed anxious and left swiftly with his companions running towards the location of the rainbow sickles, Han Shao understood that the rainbow sickles would arrive very quickly. Furthermore, Ferguson from the Church of Light was also guaranteed to drop everything on hand to deal with Han Shao. He was the most dangerous latent threat after all. With the three Yin demons at his side for surveillance, the little skeleton and Earth Elite zombie as backup, and being at the bloodlust realm, Han Shao was confident that he could leisurely escape any encirclement with the extremely fast art of the mnemonic ninth heaven. Therefore Han Shao acted very casually the entire time. He walked serenely towards the direction of the dark forest, waiting for Ferguson's group to hurry over. He would then move away from the Valley of Sunshine during their pursuit so that they would understand he was leaving the valley. In the depths of icy winter, the accumulated snow on top of the mountains revealed a freezing world wrapped in silver beneath the bright moonlight. It didn't seem overly dark even at night, as the reflection of the moon and snow caused the silvery white world to appear so silent and beautiful. Under the moonlight, Han Shao's lone figure cast a long shadow on the ground covered in the silvery white snow. Even some of greediest of merchants weren't willing to go out on such a cold night. Thus, even on the busiest roads, he didn't meet a single merchant caravan. After leaving the main path, Han Shao continued into the vast Kurlan Mountains. After he had walked for more than an hour and had arrived at a rather dense forest that was even more remote, Han Shao discovered through a Yin demon a small merchant caravan that was being furiously destroyed by cruel bandits. There weren't that many bandits, just a dozen or so, but each one of them was beyond vicious. They were shouting savagely, completely ignoring the merchant's pleading and slaughtering the men with sneers while they robbed the carriages. Several young women were stripped completely naked, and helpless screams wailed out as they were all forcefully pressed onto the trees beside the carriages as they were raped. To hear their cries was to feel one's heart bleed. There were several muscular men that looked like mercenaries on the ground around the merchant group's carriages. They had been decapitated and their blood had already dried, dyeing the ground in a dark red color. It looked like they were the guards killed in the first wave. It was clear that the small merchant group had taken the risk to travel through the night, thinking they wouldn't be noticed by bandits in the dead of winter's night whilst taking such a silent and small path. Who were they to know that they'd made a mistake and met with a small group of bandits? This was why such a cruel situation had arisen. Han Shao was not a very kind person. He had watched calmly as he once directed forest trolls to pillage places, but he'd never killed the innocent and would never do anything atrocious like raping women. They say that bandits have their own morals, and Han Shao did feel like he did as well. However, The merchants had already given up all their merchandise and were kneeling on the ground begging while continuously kowtowing. Despite that, they were still decapitated by the laughing, sneering bandits. Han Shao could not hold himself back after seeing this sort of situation, these wretched actions by the bandits that disregarded rules. This completely infuriated him. Without any greeting or bullshit, Han Shao, who had seen all the atrocious deeds through the Yin demons, burst onto the scene. Due to his anger and intent to kill, a thick demonic aura smashed onto the scene in a dominating manner alongside Han Shao. Han Shao had a hideous expression on his face, his eyes crimson. His cold and ferocious expression was extremely terrifying as his aura couldn't help but surge outwards. He used his hand to slice towards the neck of one of the bandits who was raping a woman. The left hand that he chopped out with shone like dark jade, a shining sharp knife. With a PFFT sound, the bandit's head flew upwards as his neck spurted blood everywhere. Ah! A terrified scream rang out from the mouth of the woman underneath the bandit. The woman, who'd been suffering through all this, suddenly saw the person on her body lose his head as blood splashed all over her. She couldn't help but scream in abject horror. "Who is it that dares poke their nose into our business?" Exclamation mark. "Don't you know that our boss is the butcher?" A bandit with a mustache that was just about to kill a merchant suddenly turned his head back and roared. As expected, it was Gustav the Butcher's people. Of all the bandit powers around the Valley of Sunlight, only Gustav the Butcher's bandits would be so savage and ignore the rules. Han Shao didn't wasting time blathering, letting his actions speak for themselves. His darkened face and flood of killing intent was frightening as he revealed the ruthless side of the demonic cultivator in front of these brutal robbers. He charged the man and sent a fierce punch crashing down on him before he could react. The punch closed in like a sharp mallet, punching a hole through the mustached robber. When Han Shao pulled out a fist dripping with blood, even the robber's crushed organs could be seen through the enormous hole. Han Shao's heart was filled with fury as he panted heavily like a demon king who only had slaughter in his eyes. He used a violent, perverse ruthlessness to rip the robbers to shreds. He tore one robber apart with his bare hands and crushed another's bones with one blow from his fists, hot blood spraying all over him. A bloody whirlwind blew as the dozen or so robbers were turned into stray pieces of flesh. Compared to the innocents they'd killed, their downfall was so much more frightening. Not a single corpse remained whole. Han Shao made use of the Yin demons to discover where Ferguson and Maxine had gone. He suppressed the bloodlust in his heart and walked heavily towards the dark forest, not spending another second in the carnage-strewn scene. Chapter 227. Leaving with ease, a broad river blocked the way to the front. The river's waters surged and frothed, rushing to a plain of lower elevation. Han Shao stood in front of a towering tree, panting heavily, barely managing to suppress the wild craziness in his heart. His eyes were blood red as he looked back at the two slowly approaching him. Their figures gradually became clearer beneath the bright night sky. Ferguson was using magic to bring Maxine along with him. They appeared in Han Shao's vision like two floating clouds. "You're finally here. I've waited a very long time." Killing intent billowed and weaved around him as a blood-red light encircled Han Shao's body. This crimson light was the strange energy of fear and resentment that had been nationally absorbed by his body when he killed the robbers just now. "Although your methods are cruel, you did save those people just now, meaning you're not an immoral person. I've already investigated you and know you're not from the Calamity Church. But the matters that you hold in your hands are too dangerous for this world, so I must capture you and imprison you forever in the Church of Light. Rest assured I won't take your life." Ferguson's body flew to a nearby branch as he looked calmly at Han Shao. The female elven archer Maxine's charming body alighted gracefully, notching an arrow as she did so. As she took aim at Han Shao, a feeling of danger suddenly surged in his heart and he couldn't help but cast a few more glances at Maxine. "The Calamity Church has nothing to do with me, and I have no way of using my knowledge to reform large amounts of dark creatures. I can tell you clearly that I won't be joining the Calamity Church. In fact, we're actually enemies. However, if you keep pursuing me, I won't care if your reputation is good or bad. I'll kill whoever threatens me without a moment's hesitation." Han Shao repressed the mad thoughts in his heart as he spoke viciously with a scowl. "Sorry, not killing you is already my biggest concession. I can't allow you to leave because what you hold is too dangerous for us. Ferguson shook his head and responded resolutely. It looked like there was no room for negotiation. Laughing wildly, Han Shao nodded. Since this is the case, there's nothing for us to talk about then. I won't go easy on you if you dare make a move. Han Shao rose into the air before he lost his reason and transformed into a beam of red light flying towards the dark forest. Whoosh! Maxine shot out the arrow that she'd long since notched, and it fractured the air like a bolt of lightning. An ear-piercing howl followed it as it closed in on Han Shao like a shadow. It didn't seem like it would stop until it tasted blood. Grand Magus Ferguson also didn't remain idle. As Han Shao's body catapulted itself through the air, Ferguson waved his staff, sending a blinding light shooting toward Han Shao. The current of energy gave Han Shao a dangerous feeling. He'd been shooting through the air when he felt the attack near. His charging body suddenly screeched to a halt as he activated the Demon Slayer Edge, with a thought sending it careening out of his sleeve to intercept Maxine's arrow. Han Shao circulated his magical yuan and focused the violent aura around him onto his right arm. A bloody glow radiated from his right arm as that enormous strength hurtled towards the beam of bright light with a force akin to the raging river beneath him. A resounding explosion accompanied the resplendent clash of white and blood-red light blooming in the air like a wondrous firework. There was a strange and fey beauty to it. Han Shao's body tumbled from the sky like a rock in the aftermath of this magnificent sight. He fell audibly into the river and was instantly swallowed by the raging waters. Ferguson and Maxine hovered above the spot Han Shao had impacted the water, waiting. They looked at the water, not quite sure what to do. They waited for quite a while as the river churned and frothed. Han Shao had seemingly vanished without a trace, with nary a hint of surfacing from the river waters. Ferguson and Maxine were both incredibly astonished. With the strength that he displayed, he can't possibly have died that easily. Why hasn't he floated up onto the river's surface? There's no way he can go so long without breathing. Ferguson looked around his surroundings with astonishment as he faltered, uncertain. Perhaps he's already dead. He would have surfaced a long time ago otherwise. No one can go that long without breathing. Maxine was also greatly confused as she guessed hesitantly. He must have been swept downstream if he hadn't died. Come, let's go downstream. Ferguson was certain that Han Shao was no longer there after a while and flew in the direction of the river's flow with Maxine. After the two had vanished, our Grand Magus Edwin and the female alchemist Belinda walked out of the shadows of a towering tree. It was a good thing that we were a ways away, otherwise we would have been discovered by that old fox Ferguson. It looks like Brian's met with a lot of trouble. Edwin's heart was still pounding. With Ferguson and Maxine both attacking him, he must have been knocked into the river. He hasn't emerged for such a long time. Perhaps he's already dead. Belinda guessed the same as Maxine as she looked down at the frothing waters. Shaking his head with a smile, Edwin said resolutely, "No, he's definitely not dead. Bystanders have the clearest sight, and I noticed a couple of details that were off while they fought." Although Brian's weapon also fell towards the river along with Maxine's arrow after they clashed together, its path was steady. According to what you saw before, his weapon must still be within his grasp. This means Brian hadn't fallen into the river unconscious, nor is he dead, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to control his weapon. Belinda thought back with surprise after hearing Edwin's words and agreed, that's right, he must still be alive. Hey, the stronger he is and the more he can protect himself, the more advantageous it is for us. We'll have the chance to grab him as long as he's not dead. He's certain to appear again. Before that, we'll need to understand all that we can about him. We must have him. Edwin left with Belinda after a low cackle. In a place far away from the spot where Han Shao had fallen into the broad surging river, a figure shot into the air like a sharp arrow, decorating the air with a spray of water. After getting its bearings, it shot towards the dark forest. Edwin's judgment had been entirely correct. Han Shao's concentrated aura on his right hand had completely defended against Edwin's strong light attack. He hadn't been injured at all. He'd recalled the Demon Slayer Edge into his hand before he'd fallen into the river and flown along the depths of the river, avoiding Ferguson and taking to the sky again after. Han Shao had been planning on fighting Ferguson, but thanks to Edwin's haste and desire to see everything, he'd revealed himself to one of the three Yin demons. This changed Han Shao's mind, as he then decided to hide in the river and hasten away from that place of trouble. With Han Shao's strength as well as the little skeleton and Earth elite zombie plus his magical cultivation and necromancy magic, even though he might not have been able to triumph over Ferguson and Maxine, he was confident that he'd be able to leave at will. battle. The two of them would never be able to stop him. However, Edwin and Belinda's appearance made Han Shao have to give up the idea of a pitched battle. To Han Shao, those two from the Calamity Church were just as irritating. If they ambushed him while he was fighting Ferguson and Maxine, he'd be in a world of trouble. Therefore, after weighing the gains and losses, Han Shao felt that there was nothing to be gained in staying. So he decided to avoid them and use magical cultivation to make his escape using the bottom of the river. The last time Fanny and the others had gone to the Cemetery of Death, they'd spent about 10 days to reach the place. Thanks to the art of the mnemonic Ninth Heaven, Han Shao saved a lot of time and only took a day and a night to fly there. He arrived in the Cemetery of Death on the evening of the second day. Although he rested 3 times along the way, Han Shao had still exhausted quite a bit of magical yu on reaching the Cemetery of Death. He was forced to rest and recover again. He placed the 3 yin demons outside the Cemetery of Death to wait for Gilbert's arrival, meditating for the night. By the next day he was completely recovered. The Cemetery of Death was enshrouded by a powerful boundary, and those within never felt the rays of moonlight. It was enclosed within a dark and sinister atmosphere all year long, and stark white bones were piled all over the ground, making this a sacred ground for death. When he saw that Gilbert had yet to return, Han Shao had no choice but to take out the materials that Phoebe had given him and look over them one by one. Han Shao had asked her to collect materials that would be used in the dwarves' forging, but also items that he'd be able to use in refining some magical treasures of his own. The demon infant had fully taken shape, and he was now in the bloodlust realm. He could absolutely refine some treasures now. Not only did he want to temper the demon slayer edge all over again, he also wanted to craft some useful little baubles for himself. Chapter 228 Murder Weapon. Han Shao stayed in the Cemetery of Death for 2 days in a row. He sat cross-legged among the stark white bones. The demon slayer edge floated in front of his chest while bolts of blazing lightning surrounded it. Han Shao held his breath as he gazed calmly at the demon slayer edge, occasionally using his hands to release beams of the spell fire or biting his finger to drip out a few droplets of blood essence. He slowly used the demon infant in his abdomen to wash the demon slayer eye over and over again with his magical yuan. Han Shao held some ores of rare metals in his hands as 2 balls of red blazing flames slowly covered his palms. The scorching magical fire had a terrifyingly high temperature that slowly melted the durable metal ores, causing them to turn into colorful liquids that fell onto the hovering demon slayer edge. Before Han Shao had formed the demon infant, he didn't have the ability to refine magical treasures. That was why the basic shape of the demon slayer edge had been crafted by the famous dwarven smiths. After the dwarves had understood Han Shao's intention, they'd worked on it for several days and nights as they mixed the sharpest metals into the demon slayer edge. Experiences afterwards had shown that the demon slayer edge was beyond sharp. After all, Han Shao had spent a huge amount of money for it, and it had been lovingly crafted by the dwarves. Normal metal weapons were always sliced in half without a doubt by the demon slayer edge. However, it wasn't enough for a true magical treasure to merely be sharp. It would only count as a type of magical treasure if it had some special effects. As a powerful weapon in Chu Kanglin's memories, the demon slayer edge would only be able to display spectacular effects when used by a demonic cultivator of the bloodlust realm after it is successfully refined. The slain demon slayer edge clearly described its effects. It was inseparable from massacre. The truth was such as well. When the demon slayer edge was successfully refined, a demonic cultivator who's reached the bloodlust realm could absorb the terror and hatred of his victims when using the demon slayer edge to kill, forming a natural demonic aura around him. If the demon slayer edge was deployed to its truest abilities, then the weapon absorbed the terror and hatred of the deceased into the hilt of the blade. When the demon slayer edge had absorbed enough of the strange power, the terror and hatred can naturally form a demonic soul within the demon slayer edge. This would cause the demon slayer edge to become a peerless sentient weapon. As the bearer kills more and more, the demon slayer edge would more absorb increasing amounts of negative energy. When the demonic soul finally forms, just as the enormous amount of terror and hatred stored within the demon slayer edge could cause opponents to lose their minds, so could the demonic soul within the blade could shatter all confidence. Apart from this, when the demon slayer edge becomes a powerful weapon and has its own consciousness, it will also have other unbelievable effects. Han Shao could even turn the demon slayer edge to turn into another double for him, one that possessed the ability to continuously evolve and gain more frightening energy, just like the main body. However, Quite a few exotic materials were needed in order to form such a powerful weapon. The amount of these materials were outside of Han Sha'o's expectations. Aside from the rare metals mixed in when the dwarves were crafting it, Han Sha'o now needed to continuously fuse even more rare materials into it. He had to ensure its formation by adding in magical yuan blood essence and using the demon infant to refine it bit by bit. The process of refining the demon slayer edge was not fast. It was a slow one that slowly fused the materials into the demon slayer edge, a gradual process that required magical yuan, the demon infant and blood essence. It would not be accomplished within a day. During these 2 days, Han Sha'o merely slowly absorbed the materials that the demon slayer edge required into himself and used the magical yuan, demon infant and blood essence to build a closer link with the demon slayer edge in order to construct a good foundation for it. In this way, when the demon slayer edge was not used, it could turn into a small ball the size of a grain of rice and hide in the blood essence that Han Sha'o used to nourish the demon infant, continuously providing the blade the energy it needed to be refined. When Han Sha'o attacked and slaughtered others, the demon slayer edge could come out instantly and absorb the energy of the deceased from Han Sha'o's victims. Only when the demon slayer edge absorbed enough energy of the deceased and formed the mnemonic soul within its hilt was it truly formed and a peerless weapon, a terrifying magical treasure. 2 days passed swiftly. On this day, Han Sha'o was nurturing the demon slayer edge within himself and slowly recovering through meditation. He noticed through the unit demons that Gilbert was returning. He came back to himself and stood up, taking out the eye of darkness and letting Gilbert in through the boundary. When he entered, Han Sha'o discovered that Gilbert's eyes were darting to and fro, an exceedingly lascivious smile on his face. "What happened? Look at the way you're smiling. With your speed, 2 nights and a day would have been enough for you to return to the cemetery of death. What took you so long?" Han Sha'o looked askance at Gilbert and interrogated the other. Hey, I'm just a bit late, aren't I? What's the harm? I've already dropped off Miss Phoebe safely at Zajoxi City, don't worry. There was an unexplainable element of lewdness to Gilbert's smile, making Han Sha'o feel quite out of sorts. Looking at the dark dragon suspiciously, a thought formed in Han Sha'o's head when he saw that the dark dragon had a trace of weariness on his lewdly smiling face. He couldn't help but cry out, "Did you take advantage of this time to go whoring in Zajoski City?" Gilbert didn't feel awkward when this question was asked, as he nodded with a lusty chuckle. "Honored master, you're very smart. My grandfather was right. The taste of women is so marvelous. The 2 wenches were so thirsty we rolled in the sheets all night long. That's why I was late." Indeed, the dark dragon race was known for their depravity. Just like looting and stealing were in the forest trolls' innate nature, so was lewdness in the dark dragons. This was a characteristic specific down to their core that no one was able to change. Han Sha'o understood Gilbert's actions but was surprised to see his weariness. "It's rumored that you dark dragons are renowned for your dominating prowess in this area. Can it be that 2 women in 1 night was enough to tire you out so fully?" "Honored master, this was my first time. I had a long time with both of them and then flew back." "Is this kind of accomplishment not enough? I've heard that human males are really weak in this area. There's no one that could have been as amazing as me." Gilbert puffed out his chest and said with great pride. Shaking his head disdainfully, Han Sha'o said, "If it was me, I could spend as long as I wanted with them, and not only would I not be tired, I would become even stronger. PSHT. Keep boasting. Although you're very strong master, you're still a human. Human abilities in this area isn't as strong as us dark dragons." Gilbert said, scoffed dismissively, and then proudly reaffirmed himself. It looked like this mindset was deep-rooted in his brain and wouldn't be something easily changed. There was truth in Han Sha'o's words. With his abilities in the bloodlust realm and some evil magic arts, he could make it so that he never flagged and could even use evil ways to harvest yuan to replenish yang and recover his energy. Not only would this not harm himself, but the act of intercourse would increase his strength. It was magical. Some magical arts either harvested yuan to replenish yang or vice versa. The chant of thrills was a happy way of dual cultivation that brought gains to both sides. Han Sha'o only understood these secret arts after he'd fully gained Chu Kanglan's memories. He hadn't paid much attention to it, but suddenly thought that perhaps he could use the chant of thrills to bring gains for both him and Emily when they spent time together. Therefore, when he thought about the secret arts, Han Sha'o sank into temporary quietness. He thought back back to those secret arts and slowly contemplated their possibilities. There were some that didn't require the internal essence or magical yuan from either party and only made use of certain techniques to refine one's body. There were also a few strong methods that needed a cooperation between internal essence and magical yuan, but only a little bit of each was needed. If they were deployed successfully, then the results of that time's lovemaking would be incredible. Blue Dragon, tell me honestly, if your tribe conducts these acts repeatedly, will your dark dragon bodies suffer harm in any way? Han Shao thought for a moment and suddenly asked Gilbert. Of course, regardless of tribe, the body will be injured if too much of this is done. Us dark dragons are no exception. We particularly need to abstain from this when we need to evolve, or the damage to our bodies will be even greater. However, this is our innate nature to us, and there are many dark dragons who can't control themselves, still giving free rein to their desires when evolving. Not only do they not evolve, but their rank is decreased as well. This is nothing out of the ordinary, Gilbert answered truthfully when faced with Han Shao's questions. Dragons were the strongest super rank magical creatures. However, there were also divisions amongst the super rank. There were 5 levels overall, with their ranking completely opposite of other magical beasts. The strongest was level 5 and the newly born were level 1. For one such as Gilbert, having evolved not even once, he was a level 1 creature. The lowest amongst the super rank, he only had a few of the characteristics of the dragons and heightened attack power. Hey little Blue Dragon, you've followed me for so long and I haven't given you anything at all. This time Master will make it up to you in one go. I'll teach you a wondrous technique that lets you not exhaust yourself when you go whoring. It'll make you stronger instead, and you can still do it when you're evolving. Han Shao looked at Gilbert and cackled oddly. I don't believe you. How could such wondrous techniques exist in this world? This isn't true. Don't lie to me. Gilbert obviously didn't believe Han Shao and shook his head uncaringly. You believe me, alright. Han Shao walked towards Gilbert and placed a hand on his shoulder. A bit of magical yuan flowed into his body and slowly traveled to his abdomen. What is that? Gilbert was shocked and cried out in surprise. Why does it feel like a small snake has climbed into my body? Don't move. This is Master investigating the makeup of your body. Han Shao shouted softly and prevented Gilbert from moving. The magical yuan traveled in Gilbert's body in a circle according to Han Shao's thoughts. He discovered that Gilbert's anatomy was indeed a bit different from his. Han Shao thought for a moment and moved his magical yuan in Gilbert's body according to a specific method. Half an hour passed like this. Han Shao flipped up Gilbert's clothes and dripped a drop of blood essence onto his belly button, after which Han Shao said, slowly follow the trace of the snake's movement and try to control it. Slowly direct it into your belly button. If you can do this, you will be able to possess this sort of miraculous martial technique in the future. Han Shao released the hand that he rested on Gilbert's shoulders after saying this and looked at the dark dragon. Gilbert's head was covered in sweat as he followed Han Shao's instructions with a face full of terror and nervousness. However, he was still unable to find the proper way. Han Shao could not guide him in this critical moment. Gilbert had to learn the trick of this himself in order to use it with familiarity. The drop of blood essence that landed on his belly button was like a seed that could use to turn the tides. It can provide a hiding place for the magical yuan that Han Shao injected into him, allowing him to successfully use the secret arts of harvesting yin to replenish yang. Han Shao had done all he could. Since Gilbert's body structure was different from a human's, his success was up to himself. Although it would theoretically work, Han Shao wasn't sure, and so he measured up Gilbert in a perturbed manner. Gilbert hurriedly gazed toward Han Shao after a moment and shouted anxiously, alright, it's in, I did it. The little snake returned to my belly button. Han Shao was quite glad to hear this and asked quickly, then how do you feel? Hard. I'm hard, very very hard. There was a small tint on the lower part of the black dragon Gilbert's body as he responded frantically while looking at it, unsure of what to do. Hard is good, hard is good. Ha ha. Han Shao laughed, then said proudly, very good Blue Dragon, you did it. Chapter 229, favored son of Earth with Han Sha'o's tutelage. Gilbert had finally grasped the evil method of harvesting yin to replenish his yang after half a day. Gilbert had been highly skeptical at first but slowly started believing it was true when his body began to change. He still wasn't fully convinced of the magical effects until he really confirmed some things though. Remember, you can only steal a little bit of yin energy each time. You'll kill someone if you take too much though, Han Sha'o reminded him gravely after Gilbert had fully grasped this new technique. If the sinister methods of harvesting yin to replenish yang was used adequately and only on one woman at once, not much harm would come to the woman, but if this technique was used too often or an excess of yin energy was absorbed, it would harm the woman. In severe cases her life might even be lost. Gilbert seemed to understand after Han Sha'o's repeated reminders, murmuring, "I know. Who knows if this is even useful? I'll let you know after I've tried it." Han Sha'o and Gilbert then traveled together to the Dwarves Valley. Gilbert stayed outside as Han Sha'o entered by himself to chat with Calvin. He handed the list of weapons and all the materials needed to Calvin and left the valley after concluding their discussions. With Gilbert present, Han Sha'o saved a lot of spare effort and rode on Gilbert's back. The two of them flew towards the forest troll's sacred ground in the depths of the dark forest. After flying for half a day, Han Sha'o and Gilbert arrived at the place where they worshipped Datara. The forest trolls guarding the place recognized Han Sha'o and didn't stop him, letting him enter freely, and took up the duty of protecting him. Even though it was the dead of winter, the place of extreme wood generated the thriving air of spring in the forest troll's sacred ground. Lush undergrowth, towering trees and high shrubs all grew exceptionally well. Flowers bloomed in charming shades of red and purple, filling the air of the valley with a fresh fragrance of greenery. Only a vibrant green color as far as one could see met the eye. All the plants were growing so perfectly and incredibly strong. A thick earth chi suffused the surroundings. The towering trees covered the skies and the old roots of the tree tangled together with utmost force. This was why the forest trolls had built their sacred ground atop these trees. When he arrived, Han Sha'o told all the forest trolls to clear out of this area. He then took to the skies and observed the layout of the land and elements. He identified some crucial landmarks according to Chu Kanglan's memories before landing on the roots of an ancient tree. This tree was the most ancient and largest of all the trees in this place of extreme wood. It was several dozen meters tall. Its richly interlocking branches were filled with light green life blossoming in abundance from its twigs. It looked quite old. Han Sha'o stared at this tree for a long and finally said apologetically, "I'm sorry, you've occupied the best spot. You must hand over the earth chi that you've been absorbing. I can only sacrifice you." He sent out a beam of light from his body, concentrating it in his hand, and acted without hesitation, starting to dig at the roots of the ancient tree. "Honored Master, do you need my help?" Gilbert asked enthusiastically as he saw Han Sha'o start to dig at the roots of the old trees. Han Sha'o thought for a moment and nodded, halting the movements of his hands. "No need, but thanks for reminding me. With the Earth Elite Zombie, I don't need to do any of this myself at all." He sang out an incantation as soon as he'd finished speaking, summoning the little skeleton and two other dark creatures. The little skeleton's bones were translucent, as if they were made of jade. A faint light of the soul circulated through his purple eye. As he stood there with his bone dagger in hand, a natural sense of danger emanated from him. The 7 bone spurs on his back gave others an exceedingly evil feeling, like they were 7 weapons waiting to reap their lives. The Earth Elite Zombie's eyes were sparkling with the same yellow-brown light that emitted from its body. The light covered the armor of his body like a thick layer of dirt. It was blinking its eyes right now and seemed to be looking at Han Sha'o with confusion. It seemed to be saying, "Why did you summon me?" From the appearance of the little skeleton and Earth Elite Zombie, Han Sha'o discovered that the two seemed to be continuously evolving, particularly the little skeleton. He gave Han Sha'o an odd feeling. Ever since the little skeleton had gained his own sentience, he had started acting with more and more purpose, forming an odd sort of demeanor with his bearing. "I've a mission for you. Create 49 holes of the same size in the area and then connect them with moats." Han Sha'o thought for a moment and then spoke at the blinking Earth Elite Zombie. The honest zombie nodded shyly, and before continuing to blink at Han Sha'o not making a move, he seemed to be be waiting for further instruction. Pausing, Han Sha immediately reacted. He sat down cross-legged and began rifling through his memories. His brain seemed to be a marvelous machine, as the layout of the entire place of extreme would immediately appeared in his mind, pointed out the location of all 49 holes according to Chu Kanglan's memories, and overlay them onto the scene in front of him. When Han Shao had completed this process, there was a complete schematic in his mind. The Earth Elite Zombie dived into the ground upon receiving Han Shao's next order. The entire place of extreme would suddenly started churning violently, like a sinuous earth dragon was traveling underground. Earth shook and mountains trembled as hills were formed. The Earth Elite Zombie was like a small dragon playing leisurely amongst the rippling waves of the enormous sea. A large or small hole would appear whenever he revealed himself from the ground. The Earth Elite Zombie was the most efficient and wondrous construction worker as he worked, accompanied by rumbling sounds. It perfectly recreated the scene in Han Shao's mind, using its own strength and its natural command over the earth. Enormous changes had occurred in the entire place of extreme within a very short amount of time. 49 holes had appeared and hundreds thousands of ravines connected the network of holes. It was an exact replica of the scene in Han Shao's mind. To have done it so this perfectly in such a short amount of time and with the power of one alone, the Earth Elite Zombie was likely the only character to be able to do so. Amazing to amazing. This fellow is too wonderful. Gilbert looked at the Earth Elite Zombie in complete shock. This fellow had caused such a thorough change in such a short amount of time. Now you know his strength. The Earth Elite Zombie is the favored son of heaven. He can hide under the earth as an assassin and can leave immediately through the ground if his attack fails. Even if someone evades his attacks, they'll be unable to capture him. Han Shao laughed heartily with pride and glanced sideways at Gilbert. Having done all this, the Earth Elite Zombie surfaced from the largest hole. The thick clods of earth were as if pure air to him, unable to form the slightest obstruction to him. He seemed to be emerging from water, giving others an extreme visual impact. He took out a large amount of material from his space ring and filled the empty ground in front of him. They were so many items that they eventually formed a small mountain. He then used his mental connections with the little skeleton and the Earth Elite Zombie to place the numerous material into the holes following a particular order. After doing everything, Han Shao sighed comfortably. All of the ingredients have been placed inside. There's just one thing missing now. Why is that hole empty and nothing's been placed in it? Gilbert looked at everything happening around him with interest. He took a look around after Han Shao had finished speaking and noticed that there was a hole the size of a human right next to Han Shao. It happened to be next to the oldest and largest tree root. That hole is the center of the formation and only the master can enter it. Han Shao rolled his eyes at Gilbert and explained haphazardly. He started chanting as soon as he'd spoken, summoning a few zombies, and decided to use the same method of having them fight each other to select a suitable candidate. Just when Han Shao was about to do so, however, the Earth Elite Zombie hastily shook his hand and walked in front of Han Shao, blinking frantically as he tried to convey something to Han Shao. He also waved at the little zombie as he did so, miming and gesturing as he conversed with the little skeleton, seemingly wanting the little skeleton to persuade Han Shao as well. Han Shao was surprised and held his breath in concentration, looking carefully at the Earth Elite Zombie and the little skeleton, slowly trying to understand the message that the two were sending over. The Earth Elite Zombie seemed to understand what Han Shao was about to do and kept waving his hands around. After communicating with the little skeleton also reacted and joined the Earth Elite Zombie in explanation. Short muddled bursts of messages kept being delivered to Han Shao's mind. After a while, Han Shao looked at the two in surprise. "You mean you guys have a suitable candidate?" The Earth Elite Zombie and the little skeleton both nodded forcefully upon hearing these words. The little skeleton even walked next to the zombie warriors that Han Shao had summoned and beat them up a bit, knocking them all into the ground. The little skeleton then stood proudly in front of them and gestured nobly with a puffed out chest. He seemed to be saying, "These fellows are junk. They're not worthy of receiving such amazing treatment." Han Shao finally understood after watching for a while. He nodded and smiled. Alright, I'll send the two of you back and give you some time to catch the zombie warrior of your choice. I'll try to summon you three together afterwards. The little skeleton and Earth Elite zombie all nodded their heads firmly after Han Shao had spoken. He could feel the joy and excitement in their hearts. Smiling, Han Shao gave them a few reminders and chanted again, sending the two back to their old homes. His heart was full of surprise. He hadn't thought that the little skeleton and the Earth Elite zombie would behave so interestingly. These low-level dark creatures have their own intelligence now? Gilbert was mystified as he sighed with astonishment at Han Shao. Don't voice those words in front of them or they will definitely be mad. They might even beat you up. They're outside the range of dark creatures now. I think even high-level dark creatures won't have the amazing powers that they have. Han Shao flicked a glance at Gilbert to warn him from voicing foolish words around them. Han Shao felt the little skeleton summons from the other plane after a short while and chanted the incantation again to summon the two. A light flashed by as the little skeleton and Earth Elite zombie carried a thin, frail yet exceedingly tall zombie in their arms. He was as thin as a bamboo shoot and had a green countenance to his face. There was no light in its pupils. It was obvious that it could only obey commands. The little skeleton and the Earth Elite zombie shouldered the thin zombie warrior over despite the discrepancies in their heights. One was tall and the other short. They presented a comical sight. The little skeleton pointed to the new zombie warrior amidst Han Shao's surprise and gestured, seeming to say, he's one of ours. Chapter 230. The little skeleton's faction. Taken aback, Han Shao stared dumbly at the tall thin zombie warrior. His eyes roved over the little skeleton and Earth Elite zombie, finally asking with surprise, one of ours? One of yours? Nodding, the little skeleton and the Earth Elite zombie seemed a bit proud. Their empty hands gestured at Han Shao as a flood of messages bombarded Han Shao like electromagnetic waves. After he'd taken a while to sort through the information, his heart was filled with astonishment as he looked incredulously at the two fellows. You mean you have your own minions and domain in the other dimension? The two of them puffed out their chests at the same time with supremely proud expressions. They looked like they were guffawing with laughter as they nodded. Han Shao had obviously hit the spot. On the other side, Gilbert looked at Han Shao communicating slowly with the dark creatures and also felt it to be incredible when he understood what was going on. He couldn't help but go to express his astonishment. After he recovered from his surprise, Han Shao's thoughts spun as he couldn't help but laugh heartily. Not bad, not bad, both of you've done well. With Han Shao's current knowledge of necromancy, he knew that as he continuously improved, he would eventually be able to directly surpass the limits of space one day and ascend upon that miraculous dimension alongside the little skeleton and the Earth Elite zombie. Furthermore, if Han Shao reached the level of a magister necromancer, he could even use large-scale teleportation formations to directly connect the two dimensions and teleport personnel. In that case, if the little skeleton and the Earth Elite zombie developed a powerful faction in the other dimension, they would be able to completely share resources. When Han Shao's necromancy reached a certain level, the possibilities caused Han Shao to become very excited. The little skeleton and the Earth Elite zombie were both beyond happy at hearing Han Shao's praise. The little skeleton pointed at the zombie warrior that he'd been supporting and then pointed at the hole beside him, gesticulating Han Shao to use this zombie warrior to refine into a wood elite zombie. Han Shao nodded and gave a faint smile to show that he understood. He waved towards the little skeleton and signaled him to drop the tall and thin zombie warrior into the hole. When the little skeleton and the Earth Elite zombie carried the zombie warrior to the hole, the little skeleton placed it down, then looked up at it. Purple light continuously shone out from the purple eye as if he was giving some sort of orders to the zombie warrior. After a while, the little skeleton went on its tiptoes and comically tapped on the zombie warrior's shoulders, seemingly telling it to work hard, just like a general encouraging its subordinates. It was as if the tall and thin zombie only had the intelligence to obey. After receiving the orders of the purple eye, the zombie warrior nodded stiffly, understanding the little skeleton's meaning, and jumped down into the hole. It laid down in the hole in a docile manner and looked at Han Shao, waiting for his next action. Seeing that everything was set, Han Shao took a deep breath and familiarly dropped 2 droplets of blood essence onto the zombie warrior, then cast a dark seal spell, gaining a deeper connection with the zombie warrior. After that, Han Shao crossed his legs and sat down. He gave an order to the Earth Elite Zombie, then sent out rays of black light from his hand into the prone zombie warrior. After receiving Han Shao-Oh's orders, the Earth Elite Zombie dove into the soil, disappearing instantly like an eel. With the efficiency and speed of an earth dragon, swimming around it quickly filled in the 49 holes, returning the area back to its former even plane. When Han Shao-Oh's final seals landed on the body of that thin and tall zombie warrior, the surrounding soil of the hole quickly flowed over his body, covering it as if guided by some sort of power. Then the Earth Elite Zombie rose back up and dusted off its hands with a relaxed expression. Spirit power of wood, listen to my commands and immediately take your place. Han Shao formed two hand seals as he thundered, sending a cloud of black light into the tall thin zombie. Suddenly the 49 holes that have been filled and flattened rose up. Natural green strings gradually linked up together into a dense net as if woven by spiders. The thin and tall zombie warrior's hiding place was at the center of this net. In the blink of an eye, thick earth energy all gathered towards the center as if linked by the green bonds. From afar it looked like little streams flowing towards the river in the middle, resulting in a strong visual impact for spectators. While this happened, some of the thick weeds further away were gradually wilting. Even the largest of the ancient trees, filled with powerful branches, slowly changed at a rate visible to the human eye due to the loss of earth energy. Everything was being absorbed by the thin and tall zombie warrior at the center. In order to create him, all the vegetation in the surroundings had to wilt. This is amazing. Master, how did you do it? Gilbert couldn't help but exclaim as he stared at the enormous changes around him. All of the plants around the place of extreme would need to spit back at all the wood chi they absorbed over the years. The day that the wood elite zombie forms is the day they fully wilt and die. Survival of the fittest. Only the most superior survive in this kind of environment. That's their fate, Han Shao said cruelly. Gilbert looked around and then stared at the Earth Elite Zombie and the little skeleton. What do we do now? Nothing much. We'll leave and take a walk around the forest troll's residence. With the protection of the forest troll warriors, there shouldn't be anything untoward. The changes in this area will become more obvious with the advent of time. I'll instruct the forest trolls not to bother about this. When the zombie absorbs all of the wood chi here and transforms into an wood elite zombie, he will naturally contact me and I'll come to wake him, Han Shao said faintly. He left with the little skeleton and Gilbert, heading for the forest troll's village, arriving after half a day's travel. When Han Shao arrived with the little skeleton, they were greeted by the atmosphere of a holiday. As their protector, the little skeleton was viewed as the materialization of the great god Datara in this world. The successful raid last time and Han Shao's large supply of living necessities had made the forest trolls trust Han Shao more and more. The old forest troll priest presented himself in front of Han Shao after a short while, kneeling down and kowtowing in front of Han Shao and the little skeleton. Hello, how have things been lately? Han Shao asked with a faint smile after telling the priest to rise. Thanks to your noble and wonderful guidance, we have enough rations to weather the winter. No merchants are willing to pass through the dark forest in the cold of winter, so we're all resting in the village and haven't gone out to hunt. The old priest responded respectfully and appeared quite at ease. Nodding, Han Shao said warmly, good. Train some more warriors and priests for the tribe this winter. Train them well, they'll be put to good use when spring comes again. We promise to listen to the liaison's orders and train the children well. The old priest nodded and promised. Send some more warriors to protect the sacred ground. The great god Datara will be resting within for a while. No one is to enter the sacred ground without my orders. All abnormal occurrences within the sacred ground are because of the great Datara. Don't be surprised. Han Shao knew that the formation of the wood elite zombie would cause the area to change. He notified the forest trolls beforehand just in case, so that they wouldn't disrupt Han Shao's plans. Don't worry, we'll do as the liaison says and guard the area well. The old priest didn't ask why before promising confidently. He appeared quite at ease when he didn't have to worry about daily life. Alright, if I have further orders I may come myself or send this fellow. Hey, I think you must know who he is? Han Sha-Oh smiled and pointed to Gilbert behind him. Of course, this is the strong Mr. Dark Dragon, the humble servant of the liaison. The old priest had been with Han Sha-Oh on his trip to the underground cave last time and knew everything about how the Dark Dragon had formed a contract with Han Sha-Oh. He naturally understood where Gilbert had come from. When he'd thoroughly gone over all that was to be done, Han Sha-Oh didn't tarry and left the forest troll village. After he sent the little skeleton back to his old home, Han Sha-Oh rode on Gilbert and headed further into the depths of the dark forest. There was a mysterious tribe in the furthest depths of the dark forest, full of very powerful and terrifying existences. Of course, in such a place there would naturally be more ferocious magical beasts, mystical plants, as well as some natural treasures that only appeared in legends. Han Sha-Oh had wanted to refine some pills, so he wanted to try his luck in the depths of the dark forest in hopes of finding some mystical grass in order to replenish some of his basic materials. After flying for a while, Gilbert took the initiative to let Han Sha-Oh down. He actually muttered with a hint of fear, "This dark forest really isn't right. Just now I felt like my back grow cold, as if something treated me as prey. It's too unbelievable." "Your feeling should be right. I too felt a very powerful aura that locked onto the two of us just now. However, I wasn't able to find out what sort of powerful aura it was or where it came from. It looks like the dark forest is truly beyond mysterious. Let's not fly in the sky anymore so that we don't attract the attention of some powerful beings." When Han Sha-Oh felt that powerful aura, he immediately sent out the 3 yin demons to scout. However, he was unable to determine where the aura came from. After the 3 yin demons had completed one scouting run, they weren't able to find any irregularities. However, that didn't leave Han Sha-Oh at ease, but rather made him even more cautious. What was surprising was that the depths of the dark forest didn't seem to be affected by the cold winter. The freezing air gradually disappeared as the two of them ventured deeper, while the surrounding temperature gradually rose. Indeed, it bore similarities to the place of extreme wood. Here the thick and dense trees reached for the sky. There were springs along the way as they walked in, several of them decorated with white mist rising out of them. Thanks to the vision from the yin demons, Han Sha-Oh saw all sorts of fierce high-level creatures along the way: harpies, deep water pythons, frost eagles, medusas, manticores. All of these rare creatures continued to appear in the yin demon's vision. Sometimes he even spotted more than one together. These high-level creatures were hard to see on the outskirts of the dark forest. There was often only one of these high-level creatures in a large area. Most adventurers would evade them if they bumped into them, deathly afraid of being attacked by them. However, they turned into the most common of existences within the depths of the dark forest. There were even many exotic plants growing in specific places, ones that Han Sha-Oh had never heard of or seen. There were enormous flowers growing on these strange fauna. Han Sha-Oh saw through the yin demons and a giant flower bend when the wind-blade wolf passed by, ensnaring the wolf with its stamens. The thick stem moved like a neck as it chewed and swallowed the wolf. The wolf was quickly digested amidst a thick pool of blood, and not even the bones were spat out. There were some strange-looking plants with leaves like human hands. They also had the same frightening destructive power. As soon as magical creatures approached them, they would be entangled by their thick branches and be strangled to death. "Follow me closely. Danger lurks everywhere within the dark forest." No wonder Trunks kept reminding me that although the gains were great in the forest, one might lose their life at any time. Han Sha-Oh spoke calmly to Gilbert and cautiously moved forward. However, even though he spoke those warning words, he was actually the one who lost his cool right after sprinting towards something with a face full of glee.